Hi, welcome to another edition of the Vegas Dice King, And I'll tell you what, if you watched the show last week with Johnny Law and myself, Danny Krabs, and Ralph Delegati, I was mesmerized. The first time I ever heard a nursery rhyme, Mother Goose, I was mesmerized. Let me tell you, Ralph Delegati is unbelievable. And I'm going to turn it over to Johnny Law because we also have a relative of Mr. Delegati's that Johnny will explain.
Yeah, so last week, was that 2 weeks ago, I read a letter, tried my best. I read a letter from a girl who, her first time in Vegas, and it was her little experience with Elvis and
Little
her,
Richard.
just her
Little.
disbelief in how wonderful the fantasy town of Las Vegas was. Anyways, that letter, I read it, led us to Ralph, and now, before I forget, you can find all of this stuff. Ralph has a book here, all right? We're going to talk about it more. He's going to talk about his Facebook pages and stuff. The Last Casino. If you don't have it, you're old school Vegas. The book tells it like it is. Just like when I read Gene's story. When I read Gene's story, it was just perfect of how it really was. How it would have been like if you met Elvis Presley for the, I almost said Elvis Parsley. It's what's green and shakes? Elvis Parsley. Anyways, with regards to a young girl meeting Elvis Presley for the first time, and then she goes on with a million more stories about Ralph. And so I'm going to I tried to read her story last week. She has one today, and we're going to let her go ahead and do it herself.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And I had many amazing experiences for years when I traveled to Vegas almost every year from when I was 18 because of my Uncle Ralph. And I started putting them on paper about a year ago because I was actually making a collection of stories and memories for my goddaughter, who's only 25 years old now. And all of this happened decades before. And I wanted her to know a little bit about what my life was like, or that I had a life at one point. I didn't just cook and clean and do all of that stuff. So what got me to put these on paper. So the one I have here now today is a story that took place in the casino. By the time I was in my mid to late 20s, back in the 1970s, I had been visiting my Uncle Ralph in Las Vegas a number of times, just about every year since I was 18. I usually took a girlfriend or two, and we always had a great time thanks to his generosity and the fact that he knew literally everyone in that town. Because of that, I felt like I owned the place. We would go to a restaurant or a show. I would tell them I was his niece, and the doors would open, crowds would part like the Red Sea, and nothing was off limits. We never waited on a line, always got the best seats, and were treated like royalty. I strutted around the strip like it was my own personal resort. As soon as my plane would touch the ground at McCarran Airport, an aura of entitlement would engulf me and would remain in place until I landed back in New York at Kennedy Airport and got shoved and pushed aside while trying to get my luggage. I never heard the word no or sorry, can't do it while I was in that town. It was intoxicating and I had no problem adjusting to it. So one day before I was leaving for a Vegas trip, my mother asked me to get a picture of my Uncle Ralph, who was her beloved little brother, at his job. At the time, he was a Baccarat pit boss and sat in a throne-like chair on an elevated platform in the gated Baccarat pit. He looked so classy and important in his suit and tie, and I was so proud to see him there. One morning after breakfast, I was passing through the casino with my friends. I saw that he was on the throne and thought it would be a great time to get that picture. What many people may not know is that in those days, it was still illegal to take photographs in a gambling casino. The security guards were instructed to remove the camera and or the film and destroy it. I knew this, but it didn't faze me a bit because, of course, I was special. I took the camera out, lined up a great shot, and started snapping away. The flashes attracted the security guards who came running from all ends of the casino towards me. I put my hands out to stop them and said at the top of my voice, I'm allowed, I'm allowed. I'm Ralph Delegati's niece. With that, my uncle literally flew out of the chair and practically leaped over the gated area to intervene and keep me from being tackled to the floor. He called off the guards and said he would take care of it. He took the camera from me and put it in his pocket. He said, Jeannie, what in God's name are you doing? I said, Uncle Ralphie, Mommy wants a picture of you in your chair, so I had to take one. He quietly told me and my friends to quickly walk out of the casino and not to come back until bedtime. Later on, he gave me back the camera, and of course I have that picture with the slightly shocked look on his face. It delighted my mother and still makes me laugh every time I see it.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
Great job, Jeannie. Thank you.
So now she used
What the hell were you thinking?
Right.
I'm special.
I know you are. You
are
are special too, no doubt.
So Gene mentioned the word throne. Ralph was up on his throne. All right. Even people in the business doesn't know what that means. The only other place, well, they were in the baccarat pits. So what? And Ralph has a picture of it.
He's got a
so
belly, but
when she mentions throne, in some pits, and it was down in the Four Queens in the dice pit, they had a chair that sat way above, like table level. And the pit bosses, casino manager, shift manager, whatever, these guys sat up there. So it was technically a throne, and just little things like that. You mentioning that word had that pop in my mind about, I remember, and so they don't do that no more. When I first came to town, there were a few places that had it, and that was what I thought. These guys are like the upper echelon of, and that's where Ralph comes in all his stories. I am just amazed at the stuff he has to share with everybody. Also, I'm asking you again, you have questions about it? Literally, when you watch the show, have yourself a pad of paper, pen, take down some notes, email us what you got. But Ralph, I want him to talk to you about some of the Facebook pages that he has.
Okay, there's a couple of Facebook pages that belong to me. One of them is Ralph Delegati on Facebook, just my name, Ralph Delegati. There's some interesting photos on there with some celebrities that I was with, and some videos that you might find interesting. The other one is the book's Facebook page. It's Ralph Delegati The Last Casino. Ralph Delegati Casino. That has a lot of pictures of me with various celebrities like Buzz Aldrin and Joe DiMaggio and Elvis, and just bunches of pictures that you might get a kick out of seeing. So you're welcome to check into any one of those. There's other two things that are interesting as far as old Las Vegas is concerned. One of them is called Las Vegas History, or Las Vegas Pictorial History 2, number 2. Las Vegas Pictorial History 2. They've got a huge amount of people who belong to it, and they all put up old stuff and a lot of interesting stories and photographs on that. The other one is Las Vegas History, Facts, and Lore. Same kind of deal. The members put up their own pictures and memories and stories. So if you're interested in old Las Vegas and the mob stories and all of that stuff, you'll have a hell of a time between those four Facebook pages. You'll really enjoy that stuff.
So when I first met Ralph last week or so and started talking about, I had seen, the only one I saw where that goes back and with the stories, it's a Facebook page called I Grew Up in Vegas, Baby. All right. So a lot of you are probably familiar with that one on Facebook. that's what kind of led me to Ralph's. But like I said, my thing, my passion about what Ralph has to say is it's the real deal. Jean is telling you a story from when she was a younger girl, you know, the first time seeing celebrities and stuff. And we actually, off camera, we've talked, Danny and Ralph and I have talked about all the celebrities that we've seen and all these stories. I want to say one thing, all right? And I actually had a couple people talk to me this week say, you know, well, you hear the term, you're living in the past, you're living in the past. This isn't one of those things. This is where there's literally a treasure. These are important stories. We're talking about Las Vegas. To this very day, Las Vegas is one of the coolest cities in the whole world, all right? So it's not talking about the past. We're just talking about a different time frame that is more interesting, how it led up to where it is. I mean, just from when I started dealing, when I came in town in '76, the whole city is different. I'm gonna start bringing my photos next week and showing you stuff. And so I'm talking about these Facebook pages, guys like Ralph that have a wealth of stories of information. Please get involved. Send us our email. Email us your stories. We look at all of them and would like to hear more.
Hear, hear. This is true because they set the tone and the foundation. When Ralph broke in 1958, my dad broke in 1956, and other people that were friends of my dad that came from all walks of life, all different parts of the country, and got into dealing and developed their personality and the personalities that were there before. These guys that had worked for mob guys like Lansky and all the rest of them that were working legit in the joints, but also were watching certain people's money. And
all right, talking about the mob. So last week they found a body in a barrel out at the lake where it should be 120 feet of water, but that's on ground. So that was last week. They said he found a body. Just since last week when they first opened the story, now they're talking about
Another one.
Is it mob related? We are going to find more.
They found another one yesterday.
Another one, yep. So Las Vegas is the greatest. And going back to the old school stories, they found a body last week, but it was put there in 1980, if you know what I mean. And just my stories alone, I got the tail end of the life of being a crab dealer. I kind of got the tail end of old school Vegas, the Binions, you know, and these families, the mob, Spilatro, just amazing stories. And Gene, your story is just so cute. Thank you for your submission. I appreciate that.
Jeannie,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, how exciting was it every time you had a chance to come and see your Uncle Ralph, and the excitement and the hotels and the restaurants and the shows?
Well, see, that's from my perspective. That's a little bit different than you guys. You were working there. You had your perspective. For me and for my friends who came, it was elegant. It was like something of another world for us. We enjoyed every minute. It was so exciting to be able to come there because we were dressed to the nines every night. We were out at shows. We were out at beautiful dinners. We were, you know, just...
It was borderline fantasy world, right?
It really was. And, you know, we didn't sleep. I was talking about this to a friend the other day. We would hit town and actually go like 24 hours, just keep going from show to show to show, you know, the dinner show, 10 o'clock show, midnight show, some other lounge thing in the middle of the night, and we would fall into bed at about 5 a.m. for maybe an hour or two, and then get up and start it all over again because there was just wanted to get every bit out of it.
Jeannie, tell them about the day I paged you.
One day when we were there, I was at the pool. Now you have to understand, we were young women, and we were kind of modest in those days. We were wearing bathing suits, but we weren't prancing around in them or anything the way they do. But we were lying out by the pool, and Ralph decided it would be funny to page me and watch me run all over the pool deck trying to figure out what to do. We were laying there, and at the time they used to page that. What was his name, Uncle Ralph?
Julie Weintraub. They
Julie
paged him
Weintraub.
every 2 minutes.
150 times in an hour, paging Mr. Weintraub, Julie Weintraub. And so I'm hearing this, I'm laying in the sun, and then all of a sudden I hear them say, paging Gene Cassetta, paging Gene Cassetta. And I looked at my, and I said, am I in the sun too long, or did I just hear the paging? He said, no, it paged you. And I jumped up, and I'm trying to get the towel around me, and I don't even know where to go for this thing. And my uncle, wonderful guy that he is standing inside.
Watching the whole thing, I was hysterical.
That's funny.
I
That's
was
funny.
hysterical laughing at how she was running around like a chicken with his head cut off.
I tell you what, Gene, one of the things though, when I talk to people about back then, the people, you did dress up every night. You know what I mean? The guys
Right.
usually had maybe even not a tie, but a sport coat. The girls always had beautiful dresses and everything. I
It was
know
lo-
now. You know you go in the high-end baccarat joints. There's guys with tank tops and stuff, and thongs and sandals, stuff like that in there. I understand it's a different generation, but it was just something about the magic of Vegas was how everybody was part of this just beautiful
It was like
fantasy
Camelot.
land.
Like
Yeah,
Camelot.
It was dynamite.
Yeah,
It was
magic
great.
is the right word, because that's what it felt like. I mean, I didn't have chances to wear gowns in New York at home. I went to work every day, and like everybody else, and maybe if I went to a wedding or something, I'd put on a nice dress. But this was every day. We got to be these glamorous people for a few days. And like I said, it was a big shock getting back to Kennedy Airport after it was all over and getting pushed and shoved all over the place. And I would want to say, don't you know who I am?
That was the reality of it right there.
I was special 5 hours ago. Now I'm nobody again.
It was like that show with the little guy. He said, "The plane, the plane, the plane."
Fantasy Island or something. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Jeannie, those are great stories, and I'm sure you got a million more.
I do have more. I do have more. I have lots more.
Can't wait to hear them too, from time to time.
Right? Yeah. Ralph's going to start talking about his time in the casino business. Your uncle was a famous man. I mean, and when I got here in '76, I was 23, and guys his age that were in the business, I mean, it was like royalty. You respected these guys, you know what I mean? If you were good and you did the right thing, it was unbelievable. I mean,
Well, John, it's funny you should say that, because as a young girl and not, with really any experience or anything, the way I was treated everywhere I went, every showroom, every restaurant, reflected how respected he was. Because, like I said, things would part like the Red Sea. I would walk to the front of every line, tell them who I was, and that was it. That doesn't happen when you're just some schmo from someplace, right?
wasn't it great
So
to be part of that?
I could tell how respected he was in that town. There was never anybody that I came up against. In fact, another story I'll read you in a couple of weeks will show you that. But
Well, like you're talking about with the story of when you come in and took the photo, people who are watching the show, If there's some way, there are people all across the country to this day who came to Vegas like you with these great stories of their travels here, of their experience from the other side of the table. And there are a million stories out there that I hope somehow, some way, somebody sends us an email, tells them about the show, and it goes on, because a lot of the stories like yours from the opposite side of the table are just as dynamite. You know, everybody, and it's funny because I'll tell you what, it's the same thing today in Las Vegas. So I work at the stadium, T-Mobile, Smith Center, and stuff like that. And on my application, I simply put down there I was a dealer for 50 years, and you know, what would you like to do as your job? And to this very day, I want my job to be letting people know that they're having one of the greatest times in their life, and just take it for all it is. And that's the way it is. I mean, Vegas is dynamite.
It's still dynamite. It's still dynamite, and it was in those days. I'm so honored that and happy that I was able to enjoy it at that time and know what it was at that time. It was a very, very special time in my life. I've been trying to beat the excitement of that for 50 years. It hasn't worked. There's nothing that comes up to that.
Some things you just can't top. That was the top of the line back then. Those were the golden years. Like Johnny Law says, he broke in 76. I broke in 73, and it was a life changer. It was a life changer to be in the business, but also to be a crap dealer.
So when I first came to town, people on the game would actually ask me, "Do you live in Las Vegas?" Right? You used to get that all the time.
Yeah.
So my wife, Doreen, was a cocktail waitress at Bally. That's where we met. And they had like these little rhinestones on there. And she told me numerous times, ladies would come up and ask, "Are those real diamonds?" And that's the way we were treated. So I ended up working for Starwood for Hilton 30 or so years ago. I would go back to Pittsburgh a lot. We were able to stay at the Hiltons kind of for free. At the most, you paid $69. So Waldorf had Astoria was a Hilton. All these other places right across the street from the White House. What I'm saying is, back then, when I would check in, I would have a little matchbook with a $50 bill sticking out. But people, when they would see I'm from Las Vegas, I always got a big suite or just something. You know, it was just different than the regular person used to get. It was just an honor. To this very day, I love Las Vegas, and my goal is to hear every person's story with it. So, you know, Ralph's going to start talking about his history when he came to town back then, and you want to start out with anything, Ralph?
Yeah, okay. I'd just like to say something about, you guys were talking about in the early days how everybody dressed up with furs, and they had to have ties on to get in any of the good restaurants, and jackets, or they would give you one, but you couldn't get in without them. When the people went to the shows, believe this or not, men wore tuxedos and the women wore gowns with all their best jewelry, and they got up very formally when they were going to the dinner shows or the second show. But the thing that I wanted to mention that a lot of people don't realize, when I went to work at the Sahara in 1960, the rule was if you had sneakers or you had a shirt that didn't have a collar, like a T-shirt or something like that, you weren't allowed in the casino. They wouldn't let you come in with sneakers. You weren't allowed in the casino. That's how strict things were about everybody being dressed well and class. It was very classy, and they kind of let that go a little bit.
But it was one of them things where nobody ever really gave them a problem with that.
Yeah, and it's 120 degrees, and all the women had furs. Now, Everybody was wearing fur at night too. That's another thing. If you look at some of the old pictures, everybody had fur when they were young.
Right.
Well,
So what we're going to do is, right now, Ralph is going to tell us about when he got to town. We're going to spend a minute or so because we could talk forever about it. Where did you start? How did you get here that first weekend?
Well, like I talked last week about Republic Studios. I was working at Republic Studios. And then I got an opportunity at Desilu Productions, which was one of the big things on television in those days. Desilu Productions had most of the big famous TV shows in the late 50s. And so I had an opportunity to do something with them, but I had a 6-week wait for the next Desilu school of acting. And so I had 6 weeks to do nothing. I figured I'll go back home to New York. I didn't have much money, but I had enough to get back to New York, to drive back and see my family, and then come back in time for the show, for the schooling. But I kept hearing every time we sat down anywhere at parties or wherever we were going, Lee Marvin, or sitting around the Republic Studios telling stories, they always talked about, somebody always brought up Las Vegas. So I wanted to stop for a weekend in Las Vegas to see what it was like on the way to New York. And that's what I did. I was driving in from California, going down, it wasn't the Strip then, it was, I forget what they called it, but it wasn't called the Las Vegas Strip then. And I was driving down, just come over the hill from California, and I saw this sign that says direct from Paris, or all nude review direct from Paris. And when I saw that, an all nude review, so I kind of made a left turn right into the parking lot. I said, I have to, I've been to some shows on Broadway when I was a kid, but I've never seen an all nude review. I want to see what that's like. I hadn't turned 21 yet, and I was full of hormones, I guess, and I wanted to see what that was like. So I parked the car, and I was walking in the door of the hotel, and I saw these two really beautiful looking girls coming towards me. They were heavily made up, so I assumed they were somebody from the show, and they were talking French very loudly and chattering French to one another, and I didn't know any French except bonjour. So I said bonjour, like I knew what I was talking about, and they leaped on me like, oh my God, he speaks French. He's the only guy in Las Vegas that can talk French. We finally got a man that can talk French. And they literally jumped on me, and they were grabbing me like this and talking in French, and I didn't know what the hell they were talking about, but I said, I'm not going to say anything, have a good time, girls, I didn't care.
Welcome to Las Vegas,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So anyway, they're chattering, and they felt my muscles. I was in shape then, and they were feeling my abs and talking French. And finally, when they realized that I couldn't talk French, it didn't make any difference anymore. And they dragged me out, and we went to this hamburger place. They had something to eat. It was after the first show, and they were getting ready for the second show. So they're having a bite to eat, and then they were going to go back to the show. So I'm sitting there, and we're trying to communicate, and all we did was laugh at each other for the whole time we were there trying to eat a hamburger, because they were talking French, I was talking English, I was trying to throw in a little bit of Italian. I figured maybe they know that. I don't know that much, and but they didn't know that either. And all we did was laugh at each other, and we really got a big kick out of one another. So now we get finished with dinner, and they dragged me back into the show and backstage, and they told me to stay, they just positioned me and went like this, and I stayed there, and they walked to the stage manager. He was French as well, and they're chattering away in French. I don't know what they were talking about. And then he comes over with a fold chair, and he folds this folding chair, he folds it right by what later turned out to be the entrance, the off-ramp and on-ramp to the stage, and he said, sit here in a chair. And so I sat down. The girls came by, and they said, just like this, stay in the chair. And I said, okay. I don't know what to expect. I'm sitting in the chair. So
that's how it started, huh?
Yeah. A few minutes goes by, and then all of a sudden the lights go down, the loudspeaker comes on, the music starts, and all this thing is going on, and I'm sitting there, waiting for what's going to happen next. And all of a sudden I look to the left, hear all this chattering, and it seemed like 2,000 almost nude, gorgeous creatures come running down this like a stairway right at me. running right at me, all these nude women jiggling and around all over. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? You know? And now they run past me and their feathers are touching my nose and the perfume is under my nose. And I'm just like trying to catch a good look at every one of them as they run by. And I couldn't believe it. And now they go out on stage. And I was watching the two girls I knew, and they were adorable. One was 18, about to turn 19. The other one was 19, about to turn 20. And I was 20, about to turn 21. So we were kids.
Right.
And I was watching them, and they were full of this youthful spirit. They were like little puppies. That's what I felt. I really cared about both of them very much. I felt something for both.
You
of
probably
them.
never felt that before.
No, I never did. No, really.
That's why he felt again.
Yeah.
So anyway, now they run back off and they go back on and change costumes and all of this. And I'm thinking, who do I have to kill to get a job back here? You know, what do I have to do to get a job? I'll do anything, you know. The hell with Republic Studios. I'm going to work here.
That's how these stories start. Man.
Yeah. So anyway, the show ends. And they come and get me, and they're all laughing and giggling. We go out to my car. I had my Cadillac. I figured they were going to be very impressed by the Cadillac. They didn't even notice the car. They just jumped in the car. And now we're taking me someplace. And that was funny because I'm trying to drive, and they're giggling and talking and trying to tell me stuff. And then all of a sudden, I have to make a turn. And when I'm already half past the turn, I'm screeching. And we were all in hysterics while I'm trying to drive the car, you know, but laughing and trying to make the turns when I was supposed to. We finally got to this place where they were having an after-show party. All the kids from the show were having a little gathering together. Most all of them only spoke French. Some of them spoke some English. So we sat there, and while I'm sitting there talking with them, and they're kidding around with me, I was just feeling very attracted to both of them. I really got a kick out of them. I really felt, you know, touched by them. They were so cute. Anyway, I know.
All right, so what we're going to do is, because we can talk about these stories forever and ever. Gene, thank you. We will be seeing you again. Ralph, next show, we're going to start talking about.
I'll finish the story with this one.
Yeah,
I'll finish this
Because
story.
I'm on
We're
pins
gonna
and
leave
needles
off-
about what happened after the party.
All right. Yeah, the after party. Maybe that's where the term after
I'll
party.
finish
Insider
this.
training, after
I mean,
party. Ralph invented all.
I don't
these
speak
things.
French, but I was ready to say ooh la la.
Anyways, all right. We're looking forward to seeing you next week. Ralph, thank you.
Okay, thank you, John.
It's been
Jeannie,
an
thank you
honor.
so much.
Gene, thank
Bye,
you.
Jeannie.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Jeannie, you were
Bye-bye.
terrific. I love you.
Hasta la pasta.
Bye, Jeannie.
All of us. Bye-bye.